Imagine standing in the center of just a pitch black room.
Right.
On one side of the globe, you're blindfolded, you're wearing a stonemason's apron, and you can feel the cold stone beneath your feet, getting ready to take this really terrifying step forward.
Yeah, totally disoriented.
Exactly. But then, on the completely opposite side of the globe, you are staring into this polished obsidian mirror at the summit of a towering Aztec pyramid.
With the smell of copal incense just hanging heavy in the air.
Right. And the crazy thing is, despite being separated by an entire ocean and, well, centuries of history, in both of these scenarios, you are about to undergo the exact same psychological surgery.
It's wild to think about, but we are looking at this fascinating text today, the 12 Gods of Aztec Mythology and Freemasonry, and it argues exactly that.
Yeah.
That these two seemingly, completely alien worlds actually charted the exact same map of human transformation.
I mean, they use totally different languages, right?
Yeah.
And symbols.
Different architecture, different rituals, yeah. But the sequence of internal locks they were trying to pick in the human mind, it's identical.
Which is just a huge paradigm shift for how we view this stuff.
Yeah.
Because, well, we usually think of the Aztecs as these fierce, blood-pumping warriors driven by really dramatic, visceral rituals.
Oh, absolutely.
While Freemasonry brings to mind, quiet geometry, Enlightenment philosophy.
Compasses and whispered passwords.
Exactly. But beneath those superficial aesthetics, both systems operate on the exact same foundational premise, which is that human beings arrive in this world fundamentally unfinished. Like, we're not born as final products.
No, we're really not. The Aztecs actually saw themselves as the children of the fifth sun.
Okay.
Which meant they believed they were living in this precarious epoch that required immense perpetual effort just to keep the cosmos from collapsing.
So it wasn't a given. The universe wasn't just on autopilot.
Right. They believed the gods themselves had to labor constantly to sustain creation. And Freemasonry captures this same ethos, but through the language of stonemasonry.
Right, the rough ashlar.
Exactly. An initiate begins as a rough ashlar. And we don't need to define what a rough ashlar is for you listening. You already understand that the raw, jagged stone pulled from the quarry is basically unusable.
Until it undergoes some pretty severe intentional friction.
Yeah, exactly.
But wait, a stone doesn't carve itself, right? I mean, if both systems believe we are inherently flawed, who is actually holding the chisel here?
That's the big question.
Are we supposed to be our own sculptors? Or is the ritual doing the cutting for us?
Well, it's a bit of both, but primarily the ritual provides the environment and the tools. The initiate has to actually wield the chisel.
Okay, so you have to do the work.
Yeah. The symbols merely force the introspection you need to strike the stone. And that is why the journey cannot begin in a state of passive contemplation.
You can't just meditate your way into it.
No, you need a violent jolt of energy to break the inertia of normal life.
Okay, let's unpack this. Because getting started is arguably the hardest part of any transformation,
Oh, for sure.
The source text explains that this spiral ascent begins with the Aztec god Huitzilopochtli, the solar warrior.
The god of the sun and war.
Right. But he isn't fighting rival tribes in this esoteric context. He is wielding a flaming sword designed specifically to cut away fear and, psychological paralysis.
That flaming sword represents the pure, unadulterated will to act.
Okay.
If we map this to the Masonic journey, that energy is the essence of the entered apprentice.
A spark.
Exactly. The very first breath of light in the East doesn't give you all the answers. It simply gives you the forward momentum to step out of the darkness.
Because you can't begin the work of smoothing your own edges if you're just paralyzed by the comfort of your own flaws.
Right. You have to want to move. Huitzilopochtli and the fire of the East both serve as that initiating spark.
So getting off the couch is great. But almost immediately, that forward momentum crashes into a psychological wall.
A massive wall.
Yeah. The text brings us to Tezcatlipoca, the Lord of the Smoking Mirror, and this is where that initial enthusiasm just kind of dies.
It really does.
Because Tezcatlipoca is the realm of brutal, inescapable introspection. It's like, when you look into one of those harsh, magnifying bathroom mirrors in a hotel?
Oh, yeah. The worst lighting possible.
Right. You can't fix your flaws until you're forced to see them without any flattering lighting. You see your shadows perfectly.
And Tezcatlipoca forces the initiate to confront the illusion of their own competence.
Wow, the illusion of competence, that hurts.
It does, but this is the mechanical function of facing the rough ashlar. You cannot smooth the stone if you refuse to acknowledge the specific angles of its jaggedness.
You have to know what to cut.
Precisely. This god operates as a psychological mechanism to induce humility.
Okay.
By forcing the initiate to clearly identify their own vices and prejudices, the system ensures that the ego is sufficiently bruised before any real building actually begins.
So once that ego is fractured, you are basically left staring at the rubble of your own flaws.
Yeah, it's a vulnerable place to be.
You need a blueprint to put the pieces back together into something stronger. And in the Aztec pantheon, this structural blueprint is provided by Quetzalcoatl.
The feathered serpent.
Right.
If we connect this to the bigger picture, Quetzalcoatl's dual nature is the vital mechanism here.
Dual nature.
Yeah, he is a priest and a serpent. He binds the earth to the sky, matter to spirit.
Oh.
He operates identically to the Masonic concept of the master architect, representing the logos.
And the logos isn't just a literal word.
No, not at all. It is the underlying rational design of the universe. Quetzalcoatl provides the intellectual geometry you need to rebuild the shattered self.
Balancing wisdom with that profound humility we just talked about.
Exactly.
I have to push back on this a little bit, though.
Sure.
When we talk about compasses, strict geometry, rationalism, and Enlightenment era logic, it sounds incredibly sterile to me.
I can see that.
I mean, does a system built on mathematical precision actually leave any room for the messy reality of human emotion? Because cold calculation just doesn't seem like enough to sustain a person through a lifelong spiritual journey.
That is such a good point. And the answer is no. Pure logic without empathy is completely brittle.
It breaks.
Right. Under pressure, it shatters. Both of these ancient systems understood that intellectual clarity is actually dangerous if it isn't bound by emotional depth.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. That is why the Aztec sequence immediately introduces Tlaloc and Chalchiuhtlicue, the lords of rain and sacred waters.
Ah. So the rigid geometry of Quetzalcoatl's blueprint gets flooded.
It receives an emotional baptism.
I like that.
These gods of water correspond directly to the Masonic middle chamber of the fellow craft degree. Let's look at the actual mechanics of this. You need water to mix the mortar.
Because dry stones won't hold.
Exactly. If you just stack dry, perfectly carved intellectual concepts on top of one another, the first earthquake will knock the entire wall down.
That makes perfect sense.
The water, the emotional resonance, the empathy, the moral renewal is the solvent that binds the stones together. The initiate learns that cold reason absolutely must be tempered with feeling to create a resilient structure.
But maintaining that equilibrium, constantly measuring the intellect against the emotion, that sounds exhausting.
Oh, it's a massive amount of work.
It isn't a state of rest at all. It's a state of high tension.
Yes. And to prevent stagnation, both systems introduce a mechanism of severe friction, because complacency is the enemy of the builder.
Which brings us to Tenodia, the blazing Aztec sun that demands sacrifice.
Right.
And let's be clear about what sacrifice means in this esoteric context. For anyone listening, it isn't about physical blood.
No.
Moral illumination isn't a permanent state you just unlock and then get to keep forever.
Right.
It's more like maintaining a satellite in orbit.
That's a great analogy.
It requires constant velocity, immense discipline. You have to make continuous course corrections to avoid crashing back down into the gravity well of your own ego.
Which is always pulling at you.
Right. So Tenasserim represents the relentless fuel required to maintain that orbit. You are constantly sacrificing your lower base desires to find the higher principles.
And that continuous sacrifice inevitably brings the initiate to the threshold of the ultimate psychological trial.
The big one.
Yeah. The text brings us face to face with Xipe-Totec, the flayed god, and Mictlantecutli, the lord of death.
I mean, the imagery of the flayed god shedding his skin is incredibly visceral. It's terrifying on the surface.
It is, but what's fascinating here is how this terrifying imagery functions mechanically. It connects directly to the hieramic drama of the Masonic third degree.
Okay, the Master Mason degree.
Yes. Both traditions recognize that you cannot reach the highest level of consciousness without experiencing a controlled, simulated psychological death.
A total reset.
Xipe-Totec tearing off his skin is the agonizing process of entirely shedding the old self.
But how does a tradition actually induce an ego death like that, though? You can't just tell someone, hey, stop being selfish.
Right. Lecturing doesn't work. You do it through disorientation, sensory deprivation, and confronting the initiate with the absolute certainty of their own mortality.
Wow.
By walking through the symbolic valley of death, the mind is forced to accept its own end. When the survival instincts realize the physical ego cannot be saved, The brain literally rewires those instincts towards spiritual endurance
So death ceases to be an end.
and becomes a gateway. In both the Aztec rituals and the Masonic Lodge, the grave operates literally as a womb.
Rebirth.
Exactly. McLanticutli isn't some evil monster. He is the necessary, uncompromising gatekeeper who ensures that the flawed version of yourself is fully dead before the enlightened version can be born.
And that makes the void left behind incredibly powerful. I mean, surviving the metaphorical death of the old self clears a massive amount of psychological real estate.
All that energy is freed up.
Right. You aren't wasting energy defending your ego anymore, which leaves room for something entirely new to grow.
It creates the capacity for profound patience and ultimate unity. In the Aztec framework, the harvest of all this arduous labor is represented by Xochipilli.
The god of joy.
Yes, the god of joy and sacred ecstasy. And also Sentirl, the lord of maize, representing spiritual agriculture.
Okay, here's where it gets really interesting. Because in modern self-improvement, we usually treat joy and beauty as side effects.
Like a reward.
Exactly. We view them as the vacation you get to take after the real work is done. But in these initiatory systems, beauty is structural.
That's a profound shift.
Think of a massive Gothic cathedral. The stained glass window isn't just pretty window dressing covering up the wall. The stained glass is load-bearing.
I love that.
Beauty is a foundational pillar of the internal temple.
And the master mason learns to view beauty exactly like that, not as an aesthetic luxury, but as the mathematical proof of divine harmony. Joy and patience only emerge after the ego has been subdued. And all these components, the discipline of the orbit, the emotional solvent, the psychological death, the load-bearing beauty, they all point toward the absolute pinnacle of the system.
The apex.
Yes. In the Aztec pantheon, this is Omititl, the dual god of unity.
The source text describes Omititl as the ineffable name, the silence before speech, the unity behind the pillars.
Beautifully said. Omititl unites the opposing forces we've been tracking this whole time. Male and female, light and shadow, intellect and emotion, earth and sky.
All the binaries.
Exactly. And this maps perfectly to the ultimate quest of the Royal Archmason who searches for the lost word.
And the lost word obviously isn't a phonetic string of letters you can just uncover and speak out loud, right?
No, it's not a secret password in that sense. It is the realization of a unifying principle. It is the understanding that ultimate truth resides in the space where paradoxes are reconciled. In Masonic symbolism, this is visualized where the compass, which draws infinite divine circles, and the square, which measures rigid, earthly right angles, meet perfectly at 90 degrees.
That intersection.
Right. That 90-degree angle is the exact intersection of the infinite and the material. The sacred is always found in a place where two opposing forces become one seamless reality.
Man, this entire progression is just an incredibly intense internal journey of the mind. But what fascinates me is that neither of these cultures left it in the realm of theory.
They didn't.
They didn't just write these concepts down on scrolls or, teach them in long lectures. They manifested these internal maps into massive physical architectures. They built machines out of stone for their initiates to literally walk through.
Because they understood kinesthetic learning long before modern psychology ever gave it a name. The body must learn the philosophy by physically moving through it.
Look at the Templo Mayor in the heart of Tenochtitlan. It wasn't just a place to hold ceremonies. It was a precise physical mirror of the universe's tension.
A giant cosmic model.
Right. It was aligned meticulously with astronomical phenomena, and it housed shrines to completely opposing forces side by side.
Yeah.
You had a shrine to the sun and war, sharing the exact same platform as a shrine to rain and fertility. It literally forced the person standing there to physically stand between the polarities of existence.
And we see that exact same architectural intention functioning inside a Masonic lodge.
Really? How so?
Well, the floor itself is a mosaic pavement of black and white checkers. It forces the initiate to constantly step on the inescapable duality of human life. Light and dark, joy and sorrow.
You can't avoid it.
Exactly. The room is also oriented to the cardinal directions, deliberately mirroring the cosmic layout of the Aztec world, with the east acting as the perpetual source of incoming light.
So when an initiate is walking through these spaces, they are not just transiting from point A to point B. The movement itself is doing something to them.
This raises an important question about how our bodies process abstract truth. Ascending the steps of the Templo Mayor, or circumambulating the altar in a lodge, is a spatial pilgrimage. By physically retracing the motions of the heavens and walking the path of the sun, the body falls into a physiological rhythm.
This completely bypasses the conscious, skeptical brain and encodes the cosmic order directly into muscle memory.
So the building is working on you.
The temple is not static stone. It acts as an amplifier, living and breathing with the moral energy of the person navigating it.
That is incredible. And the text concludes with this really brilliant resonant metaphor: the stone and the flower.
Ah, yes.
The author observes that the Aztecs carved their brutal, uncompromising world out of solid rock, but they covered those stones in vibrant, ephemeral flowers.
It is the perfect pairing, really, of eternal structural law with the delicate, fleeting beauty of human experience.
And Freemasonry operates identically. It is built out of rough-hewn ashlars, heavy columns, and strict, unforgiving geometry. But out of that rigid framework blossoms the warmth of fraternity, charity, and the delicate pursuit of light. And for you listening, trying to navigate a modern environment overflowing with polarization, endless distractions, and shallow materialism, the underlying lesson from these traditions is a powerful anchor.
It really is.
They teach us that true morality is not subjective. It is not an arbitrary set of cultural trends or personal preferences. Morality is an active, deliberate alignment with the structural order of the universe.
It's structural.
Yes. It requires severe daily friction to polish the stone, but it is the only labor that actually yields a resilient mind.
Which brings us to the ultimate consequence of this deep dive. If ancient stonemasons and Aztec priests understood that the physical spaces they built were actually psychological machines designed to align the human mind with divine logic, we have to look at the architectures we're building today.
We absolutely do.
Think about the digital environments where you spend the vast majority of your time. What are the algorithms, the infinite scrolls, and the notification structures initiating you into?
This is a sobering thought.
If every physical step in a temple was designed to elevate the ego toward unity, what is the exact psychological destination of the digital architecture you are walking through right now?